live in an affluent place. Beautiful buildings, glitz, glamour, and certainly we're a city that big brands love to build their flagship stores.
Sadly, underneath it all, nearly 20% of our own population live below the poverty line, some of them having as little as $30 a day to feed a whole family.
$30 buys you bugger all. Try feeding a few of you on this for the whole day. We met up with two fantastic Hong Kong charities to understand just how dire the situation really is.
1 in 5 people in Hong Kong live below the poverty line. Those affected most are elderly and children. So it is dire. And
is there any major culprits that are involved? I see there's two problems. There's those that don't have enough income to be able to buy food, and then on the other hand, we are wasteful and we're throwing away so much food. Where's the bridge between those two?
We're the bridge.
Yeah, we do our best to serve as this bridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is there, is there something that the public should be doing in order to, waste less and somehow give more? Like, is there something on the system, like in the whole system in Hong Kong, that we need to be doing?
Better. Is there a flaw? Are there any obstacles that we need to overcome to actually get rid of this problem?
Well, I think, it's building that social consciousness that wasting food is actually not okay. To be throwing away more than 3,300 tons of food into our landfills every single day, it's really disgraceful for a city like Hong Kong. And to be able to cultivate that social consciousness that wasting that bowl of rice or wasting that bowl of noodles is not just that bowl, but it's the entire process that comes along from growing, transporting, packaging, distribution, all those resources get wasted as well.
I did the maths on it, and that's 667,000 bags of rice, and the rice bags are 5 kilos. When you try and imagine how much food that is, and it needs to get from one point to the landfill, that's a lot of trucks when you think about how much food is getting wasted. It actually is unconscionable.
And it's daily, and that's the fact. I mean, in Feeding Hong Kong's perspective, it's our belief that it takes a community to help a community, and help comes from all levels, from the leaders in corporations to educators to their students to just any person in the community can help, and many do. We've been very fortunate to have had the support. Our mission has been to essentially serve as a central depot, as a food banking network. We rescue food from about 80 food donors, mostly corporations, and we redistribute this food to the 50 food charities that we support. And just kind of in numbers, what we've been able to do has been about 139 tons of food rescued last year, and 44,000 tons of just spread alone.
So you've managed to save 140 tons out of, and that's per day. So.
Yeah.
Of those 3,000 tons or more than that we waste, how much of it is actually salvageable and can go towards feeding those in need?
Unfortunately, I don't think the government's come up with that statistic yet. All we know is that's just the amount of food waste that's being thrown into our very limited landfills.
Certainly, even if it was 10% or 5%, would it be enough to feed the people, the 1.5 million that are hungry?
Well, Friends of the Earth actually came up with a study. They did this research 2 years ago. In fact, 4 of Hong Kong's largest supermarkets are throwing away 29 tons of edible food every single day, and that can feed 48,000 families just with that food.
That's incredible. And why are they throwing it away? Why haven't they said, okay, let's take corporate and social responsibility to the next level and actually work with the community and try and resolve it? Is it money? What is it?
I think a lot of it is liability. They're scared that people will actually get sick from eating this food. And so, food rescue charities such as ours, we've been trying to push legislation and to push for a Good Samaritan legislation so that food donors are protected from any liability should they donate food in good faith. But so far, we've come across a few roadblocks.
I mean, if everybody is acting in good faith and you've got somebody who is hungry, what is the chances of him taking you to court because he ate something that expired yesterday, I think that's going to be the least of his worries at the end of the day. He's got somebody that's actually caring about him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
really,
not
really
everyone
wrong.
thinks that way.
Yeah. But I mean, the numbers are growing, thankfully, in terms of the number of corporations that are, willing to donate. They're becoming also more effective in terms of identifying which is a food that's perishing at which junctures, and being able to allow us to rescue it a little earlier. So it's all, you can say it's new beginnings for everybody. For us, our charities were interestingly founded in the same year, 2009. This is kind of like way before this big spotlight on the food fight. And as we learned, we were able to guide each other, guide ourselves, and also people that we work with, our partners.
The thing that amazes me is, I've been in the food business, so everything that you have, if you can possibly not throw it away, you actually impact your bottom line dramatically. So businesses would actually be looking after their own businesses by doing things properly. Now, if something's about to expire and there's a risk, fair enough. If you're doing that and you're doing it for the right reason, that's fine. But I watched something recently where a sushi chain in Hong Kong was with another publication. The staff were eating the sushi, and then they sprayed this window cleaning chemical on it, and they threw everything else away. The danger is that somebody that is desperate will go and get that food. The window cleaner has no smell, and obviously somebody's going to get really sick from doing that. I mean, if you want to throw it away and say it's not good enough, spray it with a pink dye or something. Do it properly at least. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, do you think, you were talking about liability and so on before. Is there anyone in government championing this? Because I've seen all sorts of public service announcements about food waste and telling people to waste less, but the poster just says waste less and doesn't really, there's nothing actionable from that. What do you think either the government or private sector should be doing more of? What should they be looking into?
We've been talking about waste charge for a long time, and actually holding businesses accountable for the amount of waste that they're generating. Fortunately for us, a lot of corporates and hotels that we're working with have been donating food to FoodLink in good faith because they feel like it's the right thing to do. But a lot of others aren't incentivized to give their surplus food away.
Well, that would be quite good actually if there was a tax on what you wasted, but there was a credit on that tax by
Exactly.
working with a charity that would actually offset your amount
so
at
that's
the
what
end.
you give them sort of concessionary rates.
Yeah, it's
Are
not
we
good.
are we likely to see that come through soon?
Is it 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, and
20 years?
Well, obviously we hope the sooner the better, but the truth is, I think it's going to be a little while away. So in the meantime, it really just comes back down to efficiency. The more efficient that we are, that we can show to our partners, the more encouraged they are to work with us. And I think that's really been how we've been able to grow and really engage the community.
So the one aspect is food waste, which we have some control over. One thing that we have less control over is the amount of disposable income that people have. And hunger is something that we need to tackle, whether it be by redistribution or by trying to redress the fact that the wealthier are getting wealthier and the poorer are getting poorer. And it seems to be in a society like Hong Kong, we should be doing a lot more about that. 1.5 million hungry people in Hong Kong it's not on.
It's not acceptable. This is why we all teamed up. To fight.
Is there any merit to bringing in sort of a food stamp kind of culture or something where if you do live below the poverty line, the 4 major supermarkets say, okay, fine, you have something that is proof of that, therefore we will sponsor X amount towards you living properly. I don't think there's any shame in any of that as long as people eat.
Yeah, I think part of it is also cultural. For us, we don't charge for the food that we pick up and donate. A lot of the charities that we work with do, because they feel like if somebody is paying for that food, then it gives them a little bit more face. So I don't know if there's a cultural element to introducing a food stamp program. But we've been talking about what if one day there's a supermarket that takes all this food and then people can buy it at these concessionary rates? You know, how great would
It's
that
been
be?
done overseas. I think
Yeah.
I've seen it in the UK, and they actually pick up a lot of food that's past the use-by date, and they will put it there, and somehow have jumped through the legal loops and have managed to do that.
But supermarkets do it anyway. You can walk into any of them and they'll have this trolley and they'll have $5, $10 and all of that sort of, and they're doing that to get
Yeah.
rid of their own stock,
Yeah.
but they're not doing it for hungry. They're doing it just because it's time to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think it comes also down to logistics. If you have one centralized location, it's convenient for those who live around it, but for the other people to get to this location, it's going to be very expensive. So one thing that, you know, when we tasked ourselves early on at Feeding Hong Kong was not to become another food bank. And we tasked ourselves before we did anything to meet with as many food charities as we could. And it was our objective to understand what the problems were. And what it came back down to time and time again was their inability to collect high quality food in a certain, you know, sustainable manner, and also the logistics to move this stuff around. Many of these food charities have been embedded in their communities for many, many years. They know where the poverty exists. They know where the caged homes are that, you know, the elderly suffer in. And they also know where a lot of these new immigrant families are setting up, right? This type of knowledge, this local knowledge, is something that we can never replicate, and nor do we want to.
Sure.
So it's our goal to kind of support these guys in their mission. And, you know, we think that, I mean, you know, if we could essentially ensure that these guys, or these charities are identified, that these charities are supported, that they can go on and pass on that goodwill.
And as a community, what do you think we have to do first and foremost to eradicate it? What is the most important thing that the man in the
Poverty.
street can do? On the wayside, they've got to buy better. But what else can they do?
In terms of
I
volunteering.
think it's just being
or-
aware, actually. You know, I think with Hong Kong, there's a lot of out of sight, out of mind. You don't see the poverty. You don't see this level of
Yeah, we're good at
of
hiding it,
hunger
aren't
and you know, people who are actually so vulnerable to hunger that they can't. All they do is think about where they're getting the next meal from. They can't focus on getting a job or their kids' education or paying rent. You know, so you know, at a very basic level, we're providing them with that basic food need so that they can try and better their own lives. So just knowing that there's a problem, I think, is a first step. For me personally, it's just having your heart broken by these stories. You know, the people that you meet, the elderly, the new immigrants, the asylum seekers, you know, families that are actually middle class but have a parent or a child that's sick, and so all their money and energy has been spent on medical bills. You know, they actually start falling into the poverty, and then it becomes, you know, they become desperate for help. And you know, having your heart broken is to know that somebody in the community cares about you and that they're not living in the shadows of this glitz and glamour of a city we call Hong Kong.
I think one other part is education. This is critical. You know, I'm a parent, and so is, you know, Christina Dean, who's one of our co-founders of Feeding Hong Kong. You know, we as parents, we try to provide, you know, nutritious meals for our kids. It's really critical in their growth. In Hong Kong, what we, you know, realized, and this was one of the most heartbreaking things for me personally, was knowing that a lot of low-income families, the parents are just not providing good food. It's mostly like rubbish, like instant noodles, potato chips, soda. The stuff is absolutely, it's just horrendous for you, especially as a kid growing up. And as a result, the kids are never going to be able to, you know, grow up strong. You know, they're just not going to have the nutrition. So one of the things that we're most proud of was creating Chefs in Community. And thank you so much for your donation of recipe. Yes, because these recipes are easy to follow, and they allow families to, you know, use very little money to create meals for their, you know, that are nutritious, you know, for them. And you know, what we do in our part is, in addition to working with great chefs to come up with these recipes, and we've got 50 recipes on our first one, is to provide them with the tools. So Feeding Hong Kong, we don't take in the junk food. We take in the food that we would use for our own families. And that's been the criteria that we've had since 2009 when we set it up. And we hope that this can start the chain.
Well, let's hope that if we have a discussion this time next year, that we'll have reduced the waste and that there'll be a lot less hungry people. Thank you very much for coming onto the
Thank
show
you.
today.
Thank
It's been
you.
awesome to chat.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And that's the end of that segment. Thank you very much.